had here that the sawn off thorn bushes can just puncture the tire quite easily. So yeah, I'm going to come from behind today, take one step at a time, and hopefully the day will go my way.
We know a song with the same name, but there was no time for crooning at the Sun City Sports and Recreation Club as the countdown to the racing proper started. Spectators turned up from nearby Rustenburg and the surrounds to see their off-road heroes in action, and they knew they were in for a treat. Prologue winners the Du Plessis were off with a 25-second advantage over Harkus and Trethui in the first Motorride bat. Woolridge and Scholtheimer and the Ford Ranger were third off the line. But it was clear that the lack of rain produced massive clouds of dust, and it would be a tough all day steering through a windscreen, finding the right route, or trying to at least. Herman Sulwalt and Hendrik Fourie were next under starters' orders, with John Moore and Ashley Thorne in the Kaloy and Nardis Alberts and Colin Hunter in the Rapsa bat, bolting for an imaginary gate. The Du Plessis and their Jimco were unaccustomed to this sort of attention, but their good luck and gearbox only held for a measly 5Ks as their gears gave up the ghost. Therefore, Harkus found himself in the lead. Not that the Motorride man did not like that possession. In fact, far from it. The Ford Ranger was purring along as it has all season, but the visibility was a problem. And then they were forced to stop for a puncture, and within a few more meters, they'd had their second for the day. Sulwald and Fourie in their yellow Zarko Magnum were still upstaging the big names and clearly reveling in it. Albert says this year built a reputation as a hard driver, and his big Spec 2 bat was purring along like a big cat. The Rapsa pair had left the Leoconics duo of Moore and Thorne behind and was steaming ahead. But the Sun City route was a testing one. For Gurney and Steinbach, there were electrical problems early on, and it cost them more than half an hour. But they soldiered on as off-road racers do. As for Gibson and Brown in their bat with a big Chevy engine, they were shooting up the pecking order after starting 9th. But the dust was almost impossible to handle, and on a route where conditions were extreme, it really asked some tough questions. Taylor and Deschalaine were holding station in 10th place, but disaster was waiting for them. The Ford Ranger had picked up a few places they'd lost when the flat tires struck, but Hutchison and Bergman kept them honest. However, they too would fall victim of the tough conditions. Class S Championship leader Richard Schilling and his Plastotech race partner Chris Davies had lost minutes to Class S leader on the road Nick Gosler and Richard Carolyn. And in Class B, Prologue runner-up Ernest Corbett and Warwick Goosen, category winners in Lesotho, were making a big move. They'd edged into the top 10 after starting 14th. Foss and Pitchford in the proudly South African Nissan Navara 4-litre had also suffered an early flat, but when Duncan puts pedal to the metal, it's a scary sight. Class E, Schroeder and Huxtable, who'd notched up 4 consecutive finishes and only missed out on another in Lesotho, was steady as she goes. In Class D, the De Bruins were up into the top 15 after starting 18th, and they weren't finished quite yet. For Berthold and Houghton in the Castrol Toyota Hilux, there was more improvement. They picked up 8 places already, and they were just opening their account. The Zarco Truggy of Giel Nul and Johan Smallberger was on a roll too. They'd started off in 22nd, but were up into the top 16 and second in class. Brian Martin and Aukie Foury's story was similar, except that they'd picked up no less than 10 places and the lead in Class E. Their nearest rival was Douwe de Boer and Siemendelaan actor Ben Creer, but they too would be forced from the race with a blown engine. But the biggest movers of the day were certainly Grobler and Jordan, who have captured the championship 5 times between them. They climbed into the top 10 after starting way back in 33rd. And Birken too were flying along, but their time penalties cost them dearly.
Okay, 1 down.
And counting as a joyous Birken revs his driver along. 2005 champions Terence Marsh and Michael Whitehouse in the National Mobile Bat notched up a top 10 finish time for the first loop after starting off in 40th place in the early morning. A superb drive. The Raysonics lads could see Labuschagne and Johan Gerber had left the line in 45th place and had climbed steadily, but they too would have to give best to the Northwest's heat and dust. Their Class D rivals, Bosel's Cliff and Louis Weichelt, had scored points consistently throughout the season, but it was not their destiny here at the Pilanesberg. Gerber, meanwhile, had problems of his own.
Oh, we lost water. I think it's pushing out. I think it's biting a gasket.
Louw de Bruin and Willem Bosch in their Rubicon Toyota made steady progress, but lost time towards the end of the first loop with mechanical problems. The Raysonics team was still battling with that gasket, while the rest of the field just shot by with the wave. Labuschagne was not exactly a happy camper. Optimistic, yes. Happy? Definitely a big no.
You think you're going to make
that thing is going right. All those gremlins, but we'll be there.
You think you'll get back to DSP?
No, for sure. It's just a little bit of overheating problems, but we'll sort it out. We thought we've caught it now.
Was that a Nissan man saying nothing goes right? Naeem Musaji and Rayon Bodjana and the TTR Racing Jimco had also taken an hour's penalty in the prologue, but a super drive saw them move into the top 26. The Barton Tyres Services team with Thomas Rundle and Brian Roberts had gone off in 62nd place, but a solid 3-hour and 23-minute clocking saw them moving up the order. However, the big mover and groover of the day was Alfie Cox in his Motorrad Bat, who together with his trusty co-driver Henny Tersteger clocked the fastest time for the first loop. He was applying the pressure as only Alfie knows how. Next up it was his teammate Brandon Harkes, who together with Marcel Trethouille in their bat had held steady in second place. Despite a puncture, he was more than 3 minutes down on Cox though. Silwold and Fourie had moved up 1 place after overtaking the Ford Ranger, and clearly Herman was reveling in the dry and dusty conditions. course was going well, but just a few k's later, he was parked on the side of the route. A differential problem was the end for him. Also, Pitchford's strange season continued. Gibson and Brown in their absolute bat were doing the same act though as further up, and just as fast too. They were up from 9th right into 4th place. While the Ford Dio had lost 2 places after being hampered by the dust, still not out of it and probably trying to conserve the car. The roughness of the route was confirmed when the next car made it 4 out of 6 for the special vehicles, as Ernest Corbett and Warwick Goosen jetted into view in 6th place. But almost got it stuck sideways. Berthold and Houghton, battling a misfire in their Hilux, were next through the checkpoint on their way, clocking the 7th fastest time for the first loop. Manfred Schroeder has a quiet driving manner, almost seeming to be out for a Sunday afternoon spin, but he does so in double quick time. He and Huxtable were up into the 8th place. You take the low road and I'll take the high road, or something like that. But work, they made it work. Next came Jorge in his typically spectacular style, letting it all hang out. Easy to see why the spectators love watching him. By now, the De Bruins, Hichu and Jaap had moved into the top 10, and they knew it would not be a bridge too far for them. They were steaming along in the Toyota. Despite 2 early flats, Bez Besaidnout and Johan de Bruin in their Edenko bat had themselves moved up substantially from 17th after the prologue to 11th, and it passed some big names on the way. While Class S leaders Nick Gosler and Richard Carolyn had their 7-year-old raceco sounding like new and going like it too. And we think that's called making sure. Martin and Fourie were steady on their way to 14th overall and were second in Class E. With Kobus van Tonder and Rian Kwalpa picking up no less than 15 places from 30th up to be second in class. Nell and Smallberger in the Bosel Truggy were good for 16th after themselves picking up 8 places. Gurney and Steinbank had had a disappointing ride. They were 7th off the line but took ages to repair an electrical problem. They plummeted to 19th place. Gary Gillingham and Peter van Vuren in their Shell Raceco and Moratoli Ramusika and Untati Bereng in their Toyota had a slight disagreement about where to cross this obstacle. Okay, you go. No, you go. No, you. But they eventually sorted it out. We do wonder if they shared a beer afterwards. We figure so. Luckily, there were no such problems for the Weichholtz in their Toyota, which incidentally was leading the manufacturer's race, largely due to the fact that the privateers were doing their bit for the brand. Richard Schilling is one of the colourful characters of the sport, and his racing also reflects it. He's had 2 wins so far this season and was 25 minutes behind in Class S. Karl-Heinz Sulwalt and Paul Helberg and their Zarko were solid even after having to repair both the top A arms on their car. While Naim Musaji thought the bridge would be a good time to impress spectators with his car's high limit for revs. Figure they were impressed after all. The Kunz and their Landy were holding up equally well, and their fine drive had got them at 21st place. Yuri and Andre Duplessis had missed a few of the marshal points out there, but decided then to retire after Loop 1 because they realized that it would cost them too much and the time penalties would be too much to make up. As for David White and the Rurikon Truggy, they say there are several ways to skin a cat. And here's another, reminiscent of Jody Scheckter in his heyday. Mark Renier was going sideways. The Toyota was getting flogged. Back with more off-road after this.
Vehicle and asset